In today's video, we're going to be having a conversation about the most undervalued Pokemon card sets that you need to be picking up cards from right now. But before we jump right into it, if you want to enter into our weekly giveaways, make sure you leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got 3 winners, so you've got multiple opportunities to both enter and win. And then lastly, we just recently started a Patreon where you're going to be having access to distributors where you can purchase product at wholesale. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check the link for that down below. And then we also have an amazing community of Pokemon fanatics within our Discord, and there's constantly deals going on and links to deals going on. Down in our description is where you can access, of course, all the links to this. But jumping into today's video. Now, if you weren't, of course, a part of the live stream on Tuesday, but one of the biggest questions I feel like a lot of people had for our Q&A was, hey Eli, I know obviously at the very end of your last video on Monday, you had a conversation with us where you said, I don't think you should be picking up booster boxes. I think that you should be waiting right now because there's reprints coming for the majority of course, sets that are, in the current standard rotational format. I was very much so trying to direct you guys into being available to the idea that, hey, right now, when it comes to product and what's the best to pick up, Crown Zenith and some of these other specialty items are what you should be really focusing on. Wait on booster boxes. Well, people were, of course, then asking me the question, well, what about singles? What about sets that are, of course, currently available out in print right now? Do you think it's exactly the same when it comes to booster boxes? Are there certain sets that you say to yourself you wouldn't pick up booster boxes for, or you wouldn't pick up Elite Trainer boxes for, but you think the singles within them are extremely undervalued? And so I'm going to be having a conversation about that because there's just been so much, I feel like, confusion as to which is really a good pickup right now. Now, before I give you guys my top 3 sets that I'm interested in, I want to once again preface by saying this like I did in the previous video. I'm going to say this at the beginning instead of the end this time. When it comes to any sets, in my personal opinion, that are still in standard rotational format, I believe that there is no point in picking up singles at this time for a long-term collection. I know, obviously, if you look at sets like Brilliant Star, for example, the prices of the cards do seem to be undervalued, and that was one that I wanted to have a conversation about. However, if we are going to have an inevitable reprint for Brilliant Stars, which I do expect that to happen, even though it feels undervalued right now, it's not going to feel undervalued once, of course, it does eventually get its reprint and prices are going to continue to go down. So regardless of, hey, this seems like a good deal because prices have been going down for this set, it hasn't been going up for alt arts compared to some of the other sets in the standard rotation. Doesn't matter to me. I still think you got to be patient with that and play the waiting game when it comes to any of the sets in standard rotation, which, if you don't know, that set's released from Battle Styles up until present. Anything prior to that is a completely different conversation, which we are going to be talking about. Most of my top 3 favorite sets to look at for singles are part of not in the standard rotation, which is why I think, honestly, is a big factor as to why they're undervalued. Because you would presume that, all right, they're no longer in the standard rotational format. We're not going to be getting any more prints for these. Sure, some of them, of course, there's still packs readily available for you to purchase, whether it be through Elite Trainer boxes, booster boxes, specialty, non-specialty product, etc., etc. But still, I believe that as the supply for these products start to dwindle and the amount of product being open for these singles starts to dwindle, you're going to see a more or less bottoming in price for a lot of these. Now, as demonstrated, of course, or shown on the first screen, Hidden Fates is going to be one of our top sets that I think is extremely undervalued, all things considered. I mean, if you just go and look at the price chart just within the past year, and this is within the past year, ladies and gentlemen, the price has gone from $400 all the way down to $350. So it's dropped more than 10%. And if you don't remember the history of what the Charizard was, at one point it was selling raw for anywhere between $600 to $700, and the PSA 10 version was selling for $1,200 to $1,500. And now the PSA 10, its current price is valued at the previous all-time high for the raw Charizard. So value for this set has gone up It's just been going down like exponentially. Not to mention too, if you remember the Mewtwo at one point was selling for roughly around $120. Within the past year, it's gone from $55 all the way down to $40. So that's well more than a 30% drop. And it's just continued to just be devastatingly down in the dumps in terms of its overall value. So long term, the item itself has dropped anywhere between 50 to 66% plus value. So when I look at this set as a whole, and we know that the both elite trainer box for this set as well as the singles for the set, the prices have either gone sideways or down for the past year. It just kind of feels like that's a inaccuracy in the market on what truly should be the value for the set and a lot of the product, and it's been doing this for the longest time. And so I feel as if there's a major opportunity to truly be gained from this if you of course are interested in picking up Hidden Fates products, whether it be the Elite Trainer box, the PSA cards, or the single raw cards, because I think any of these are awesome pickups at the moment considering the long-term implications on how valuable these cards can be based on what history has shown us. Not to mention too the implications of this set as a whole entirely, as it was hyped up as arguably one of the best sets of all time, if not one of the best sets in the Sun and Moon era. So you would presume that that is going to hold a lot of strength in value to it. Now, the next set we're going to be having a conversation with, in which I think is undervalued, and people might look at this and be like, really, you think this is undervalued? I think that the set is garbage. But yes, it is Shining Fates, and I know a lot of people don't like this set, but hear me out as to why you should actually like this set, whether it be from an investment perspective or whether I think it's a good time as a collector to be able to pick all of these cards up. When it comes to the Sword and Shield era, right, it was, from a video game perspective, the number one largest grossing video game that Pokemon has ever had. The pandemic, of course, contributed a large portion to this, but regardless of that, when you think about the future of Pokemon and what, of course, the fan base truly is, it relies a lot on nostalgia. When you say that the video games themselves were some of the largest grossing in Pokemon's history, and what's a large portion of the fan base, it's kids that are going to grow up in the Sword and Shield era. And sure, you might be a Gen 1er through a Gen 5, 6, and you might say, oh, I hate Sword and Shield era because it doesn't hold really nostalgic value to me. Well, there's a large portion of kids that are not going to agree with you in that regard, and they're going to look at Shining Fates as one of their favorite sets that they grew up with as a kid. And so for that reason, it's going to hold a lot of nostalgic value in the future because of the base of individuals that grew up with Sword and Shield. Not to mention, on top of that as well, it is a shiny set, which adds even more value to it. Regardless of whether you're a fan of the Galar region or not, when having a complete shiny Galar Dex, it's going to add its value to it. And of course, having the highest, most expensive card in the set being a Charizard is going to add more value because, I mean, it's a Charizard. So when you look at the price value of what the Charizard has done, within, of course, the past year, it's really gone down about $138 to $100. So about a 30-ish% drop. But even prior to that, the value of the Shining Fates Charizard was at roughly, I think at its highest point, $350 before it reached its inevitable drop. And the price of these products have just done nothing but continue to crash. I mean, after the Charizard, the Suicune is the next most expensive item. This item at one point was selling for $60. It's now selling for, $10, and it's just continued to go down. So the opportunity overall to, one, not only pick up the set for dirt cheap if you're someone that likes to collect, but two, pick up this set for dirt cheap if you are someone that likes to invest and potentially see the long-term possibility of the set as a whole, whether, once again, you want to pick up the Elite Trainer boxes, the single slabs in PSA 10 condition, or of course the just single raw cards. I think you can't go really wrong with any of these, as I think the majority of them are currently undervalued. And lastly, I mentioned I was going to be showing you guys 3 sets, and this one might come once again as a surprise for a lot of people. It might not, but I believe that Vivid Voltage is a set that is extremely undervalued at the moment as well. Now, most people are going to make the argument, and I've made this argument for before in the past too. The only amazing thing about this set, or the only real chase in this set, is going to be the Pikachu. And now from a dollar value perspective, of course, that is true. That makes sense. The Rainbow Chunkachu is really the only chase card that has an inherent dollar value to it. However, if you were, of course, back in the day, and by back in the day, it's weird to say that, but like 2 years ago, around for when Vivid Voltage first came out, the Rayquaza was going for $50 to $60. The Amazing Rare Rayquaza, a bunch of the other amazing rares were going for $30 to $40 a pop. And the only reason why the value of them went down is because this set got absolutely printed into the ground, and so you saw a large amount of supply, of course, pop up, a large amount being graded, which then tanked the value as a whole. And when you look at Amazing Rares as a whole, the only other set that has, of course, had them is Shining Fates. So they're a pretty kind of scarce item, I should say, when it comes to like the history of Pokemon collecting, and they're a scarce commodity in that regard, but with a higher supply. And so I think there's still going to be that kind of pocket of demand that people are going to want from it, even with its supply, because it is such a cool concept in terms of Pokemon designs that I think could potentially bring a ton of value to the set overall. Not to mention, this is the first time we've had a mainline set that has Pikachu as the main pull, being a Rainbow Pikachu. At its highest point, we saw the raw card going for around $400 to $500. It's now going for as low as around $130-ish to $140-ish. So once again, going through the value of that, it's dropped nearly 50 to 60% in value. Same concept applies with the PSA card. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of opportunity to be able to pick up not only Elite Trainer boxes, PSA 10 singles in this set, raw singles in this set, and even Vivid Voltage booster boxes. If you're talking about booster boxes that I do think are worth picking up, I do think there's an argument to be had that Vivid Voltage, Darkness Ablaze, about to go out of rotation, unless we hear of any news in the next couple of months before they do go out of rotation that there is going to be a reprint. I think after that, there's a point to be made that, hey, it might be a good time to pick up the booster boxes for these sets because there's no expectation of a reprint happening before they go out of rotation. And then there's definitely not going to be any reprints for it because Pokemon Company doesn't print booster boxes that are out of rotation. So I would definitely take these things into consideration if you are looking at this from the sealed side. But from the single side perspective, I do think now is a really good time to be able to pick up a lot of these PSA 10 slabs as well as the singles. But that is all for today's video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. As always, want to enter into our weekly giveaways, make sure you leave a like, comment down below, subscribe. We've got 3 winners each and every week, so you've got multiple opportunities to both enter and win. And then lastly, if you're interested in joining our wholesale access tier where you can access any of our distributors to purchase from, links down in the description below to join the Patreon for that, and all other links to check out our social media as well as be a part of the community in the Discord. Links down in the description below for all of that. But that is all for today's video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Until then, I will see you all on Friday. Peace.